Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is the Creative Collaboration Show. Chuck Anderson here, and I have for you another amazing guest. And as you know, it's our mission here to help you to grow and scale your business and make that big impact in the world that you always knew that you could make and that your business could make. And you might be just one good collaboration or partnership away from that big break, that big scaling moment that you're looking for in your business. And today is someone that I have had the pleasure of getting to know over the last few months. We're working together on multiple fronts. So I have with me Yvonne McCoy, who women's business strategist, but really, I think, really smart men as well. And so anything to do with business strategy, especially if you felt like you don't have a strategy, or you could use a new strategy because what you're doing isn't working, or maybe even just feels like you're spinning your wheels a little bit. Well, we'll let Yvonne talk a little bit more about that as we dive into this episode. So Yvonne, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks so much. And one of the reasons that I think strategy is so important is I always tell people it doesn't matter how fast you're going if you're going in the wrong direction. And so I think that has so much, that's a lesson I think that I've learned over the years is that, unfortunately, as entrepreneurs, we tend to really be attracted to the bright, shiny object. And so we're always like, when something doesn't work, we don't say, why does this not work? We go, oh, I'll try something different. And I think, if you don't know where you're headed, it doesn't matter how many different things you try because you're not headed in one unified direction. And I think unfortunately, my background, so much of my life, I think, was based in the expectations that my family and society had for me. And I think everybody has those limiting beliefs. And Buckminster Fuller says, we're all born geniuses and then it's educated out of us, which I think is absolutely true. And I made so many decisions in my life based on the idea that I was good at math. When I got my MBA, I majored in finance and accounting, which I absolutely hated because I was good at math, but I really wanted to do marketing. I'm probably, at that time, I was one of the few people who really liked to watch commercials, you know. And, here I am years later, actually being more involved in the marketing and much less involved in the accounting. Oh, absolutely not involved in the accounting. I think it's really important to know where you're going. And that's probably the biggest lesson. It can evolve as you go along, but being true to yourself and what you're really good at.
Yeah, it's so true. And many of us live day to day. What do I need to do today? What didn't I get done yesterday? And it can sometimes feel challenging to look beyond
Mm.
today or even tomorrow or next week, let alone the next year or 3 years. Some people have 25-year visions of their life and their business. And I know you come from the corporate world where they probably did a lot of that vision work as well. And so your what's your journey on that? And so what's your kind of approach to strategy with yourself, with your clients, overall?
Well, I think, one of the things that I say to all my clients is you have a heart business and you have your head business. Your heart business is the one that you really want to do, which is probably tied more to your vision and your long kind of thing. And your head business is the thing that you could do with your eyes closed. And the goal is to find the overlap. I kind of think in Venn diagrams, right? So to find the overlap where, your heart business, usually you say, I would do this for nothing. But then that's not a business, that's a hobby. And you can't live on nothing, right? And so what is it that you can do from your head business that will also either fund your heart business or, combine the two? So for instance, I was just working with somebody who um, wanted to work with seniors to teach them computers. And, as much as we looked around and thought of ideas. We couldn't find a way to make that a steady stream of, income. But then we started looking at older people are getting into business, are becoming entrepreneurs. And so now she works with older entrepreneurs, and has started working with coaches who have computer parts to their programs so that they can make it easier. So she's like an extra little bonus that they get, and she helps them to make videos so that people know how to use, you can put those together in a way that is exciting, right? And get the best of both, that you can make money at something that is also your heart. And so that's been part of my journey, I think, is that I think all of us have a situation in our life journey where you have the before this event and the after this event, right? And I had a situation where I worked for 15 years in corporate and didn't get my contract renewed, and I was totally devastated. I mean, at the end, every May after the tax season, I would go to the shore for a little, decompression. And this year, a marketing person walked up to me and said, "What do you do?" And I burst out in tears and said, "I don't do anything." I mean, I was just like, I was my job. I mean, that's how I was brought up. You got to have a job, right? And it was kind of at that point that it was like being hit by a 2x4. But it was like, you know what? I got unemployment. I got some money coming in. I can actually do whatever I want to do for a while. And so I decided that I would volunteer at an adult literacy program because I couldn't read as a child, and somebody took the time. And I always thought, oh my God, here's an adult that's willing to say, I really need this help. And the bad side of it was I was really bad at it. The people that I had in my class, I mean, I could teach them math, I could teach them, decision making and critical this and that, but I could not teach them to read. But from there, I got into their literacy workforce, where I went into companies and did training, and there were grants to help raise the reading level. And one company that I absolutely loved, the project that I did, I still call it my wow project. They ended up saving $500,000, and they basically got the people to start thinking about the process. And what I learned is I'm really good at process. I'm really good at seeing systems and patterns. And so from that adventure, I ended up doing coaching. I bought a book that said 22 life strategies you should know. And I was like, the people in my class could really use this. And then I started reading it. And it was like, oh my God, I need this. Oh my God, I need this. And it was by Thomas Leonard, the father of coaching. And then I went to coaching school, and here I am. And it has evolved. I mean, the things that I taught. But what I find is everything is useful if you stay curious. And that probably is the biggest before and after in the last year and a half, is the idea of don't be judgmental. I used to be a very type A person and very fix it. And I still slip into my type A, but being able to ask people questions and say, have you thought about this? What about this? Why now? What is the purpose? Right? So that it gets their creative things. And you find people do not know what their gift is. And their gift is so amazing. I mean, and it's really hard to know what your own gift is. I said something to somebody, I think I said something to you the other day, and I was like, how could he have not thought of this? But it's just a very, when we were talking about, packaging some of the VA hours to do really just support this particular thing. And I've said to other people, things that were just throwaway things in my mind that were really big aha stuff. So, if I were going to talk to somebody, I would say, first of all, being an entrepreneur is not for the weak of heart.
Not at all.
Because it's not, it just is, you're shooting at a moving target is what's happening. And if you can't, I mean, that's why I came up with my system. I don't know if I told you, but, in March of 2020, I was in the hospital for 5 days, not for COVID, but for something else. And when I came out, we were in COVID shutdown. And I had lost all my clients because I had a lot of nonprofit clients at that point. And I suddenly was scrambling. I mean, I was really scrambling, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And, I went and looked at the mounds of stuff that I had collected over the years, that I had been practicing on and not implementing, right? And said, what things in here are going to help me to get some clients right away? And that's how I came up with my VIP profit roadmap. I mean, I didn't name it that, but that's what it ended up being. And the first part of it was what we talked about, was having a vision, having a purpose, knowing where you're going, right? And in my mini course, it's called Debt Reckoning, which is a sailing term. But that's how I lost 150 pounds. I mean, my doctors were saying to me, "You're killing yourself," because I was over 400 pounds. And I knew the formula for losing weight. You eat less than you burn more than you eat and all that kind of stuff. But I did not have a big enough why. Apparently dying wasn't a big enough why, because we're all going to die anyway, right? So so but when I realized that my first grandchild was coming along, I wanted to be really active with them. I didn't want to be the kind of grandmother my grandmother was, although I loved her to death. She never left the kitchen. Um, And so that was my why. When I got ready to eat something, I was like, is this going to let me play with my grandkids? Or is this going to keep me from playing with my grandkids? Do you know that? And that was the thing that changed everything. And that was, so when I started getting clients, it was kind of like, what is my purpose? What am I trying to do? So one of my purposes was, because I didn't want to feel salesy, I wanted people to feel better after they talked to me than before, whether they signed up to work with me or not, so that I could come from kind of like, I'm giving value to the world, you know? And that was part of my vision. And that's kind of how it started. And then we went into, you can't do a transformation without understanding how change happens, and you have to be innovative to stay relevant. And from there, it went into, how do I stand out from the crowd? I have a certain uniqueness. What's my profit uniqueness that attracts my ideal client to me? And so that's what the VIP stands for. It's your vision, your innovation during change, and your profit genius. And the thing that's interesting about it is, although it doesn't say it, the whole thing is, not only are you a very important person, but you're actually the CEO of your business. And that's what I want you to see, that you don't have to make decisions based on somebody else, that you have a way to make decisions for yourself. So it probably drives my clients crazy when they go, what should I do? And I don't know. And I go, I don't know. What's the purpose of what you got to do? What are you trying to do? You know? And so, but they learn how to work through it, so that, because that was the way I was like, just tell me what to do, and then when it didn't work, it was like, why would they tell me to do that? And never take responsibility for it myself.
Hmm. You know, well, I love being purpose driven. I love that answer to that question, by the way, because I have clients ask me all the time, what should I do? And in my style of coaching, and especially with the mentoring, I always have an answer for it. I'm like, oh, you should do this and you should do that. But when we're really looking at it and we're really being purpose driven, it's like, you don't necessarily have their answer, but what is their answer? And the other thing I love about that question is, we should probably be all asking ourselves that with everything we do. Like, what is
Mhm.
the purpose of what I'm doing? Am I doing this out of habit? Am I doing this out of routine? And is it getting me closer to my goal or further away from my goal? That was the other thing you said. When you really knew
Mhm.
your purpose, is this getting me closer to the way I want to be with my grandchildren, or is this taking me further away from it? And that's a great check-in. And then,
Well,
am I doing the right things? And are the things that I'm doing or trying to do even in alignment with that?
and kind of also learning the difference between strategy and tactics. I mean, it's kind of it's interesting because we talk about, let's say, building our email list. Well, you don't necessarily have to have a large email list to get traction, right? And so, I did a lot of, people like do giveaways. So I did giveaways, right? And I got a lot of people in my email and they downloaded the freebie and then they unsubscribed or they never opened the email afterwards. So that was like, this is not, this is a tactic, but it's not working for the people that I want. I found speaking on summits were much better. I mean, I got a much smaller add to my email list, but they were much more responsive. And so, it's not enough to just say, I want a big email list. You want a responsive email list, and that's one of the benefits, I think, of having affiliates, because when an affiliate sends somebody to you, they've given you the star of approval, right? They've said, this is somebody I think is interesting that you might like, right? So they aren't necessarily as cold as as a giveaway or someplace else, right? And if they see that person promote you more than once, they you have to get the message at the time when you're ready. So even part of my thing was I didn't post on social media because it's like, oh my God, how many things can I talk about, and that kind of stuff. And then I began to realize I repost stuff all the time now. I go back to for like 2 years ago and I look at what I posted and I go, oh, I haven't talked about that for a long time. I'll repost that, right? Because I have what I call the rule of three. Anything you do, you should be able to find 3 uses for it, right? Whether it's you repurpose it, whether you use it in a newsletter, whether you use it as a talking point, you put it in a video or whatever. And that way you stay consistent with what you're talking about, kind of. And so, now what I talk about all the time is my VIP, your vision, your innovation, and your profit uniqueness. But now I'm starting to get traction because, I can relax and I talk about, those 3 things, and I talk about my dog, and people always open pet posts, but the thing is, people are not always ready to hear your message that day. Sometimes they have to hear it 2 or 3 times. And I have a group that I work with, and I'll come back to that group and I'll go, I know you told me to do this. I know you've told me repeatedly that this is something I should look into, but I just heard it from so and so and it made so much sense to me. I don't know why that is, but so just being consistent and being visible so that people know that you're out there, you're not a flash in the pan, that you're vulnerable, you share your mistakes, you're like, I'm like you, I make mistakes too, right? But this is how I reset, because I can reset because I know what my vision is, I know where I'm going to, I know this is part of the innovation process. So, one of my mantras is fail forward faster.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good one.
you know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and then extract the learning from that, right? What did
yes,
I learn from this attempt that did not work that gets me closer to what I do want? And that's Blair Singer. You mentioned Bucky Fuller earlier. One of my mentors, Blair Singer, was going through Bucky Fuller's stuff. So I got a lot of that. But that's one of the things that we took away is like, look, even though you tried something and it didn't work, there were things that you did achieve along the way. What were those things?
yes.
And maybe, just maybe, that's really what you really were after all along. And that was a very interesting takeaway from that.
I think I used to think that success was you do something, you either succeed or you fail. Now I know that it's an experiment because everything is constantly changing. And so you do something, you fail, you evaluate, you keep going, you extract, and then you succeed. And for me, the analogy that I use is life is not a light switch. It's not binary choice. It's not off or on. It's a dimmer switch. At one end is the off, the other end is the on. And in between, there are a myriad of options. You know, you may not be able to do it 100% the way that you want to do it, but there's some place in between that you can give yourself permission. You know, for instance, you may want to make a $5,000 ad buy, but you've got, you know, a $50 budget, right? So you don't say, well, I'm not gonna spend the $50. You say, where can I spend the $50 that makes more sense? Instead of doing an ad buy, do I see if I can, you know, buy something else that's gonna, you know, amplify what I'm doing? Or do I say, I'm gonna save this until I can have more money and get into a summit, right? Um, and so that's the kind of thing that's how you want to be, you know, thinking and looking at patterns and stuff. I mean, one of the big initial patterns for entrepreneur is that they're really good at what they do. And so when they need to grow past themselves, there's not that support or that infrastructure to do that, and they don't know how to bring that on. And so typically they've hired friends and family because they were available in the right price, but they're not the right person. And so then they're like upset because they can't get the kind of results they want with the people that they have, right? And what they don't understand is it's not them, it's not those people, it's them, right? So that's a pattern that if you know that that's there, you can go, okay, how can I avoid this? How can I really figure out what it is that I need to have done and look for the right person?
Mhm. You know, one of the takeaways, and I want to make sure that we, get everything in the time that we have. You know, one of the takeaways that I got from what you've been saying here is that really stands out to me is knowing the difference between a strategy and a tactic. And, that's one of the things that, we complement each other very well. Everyone knows with my work with affiliate marketing and recruiting affiliates, that is very tactical. There's strategy that drives the reason why we do that, but it is a tactic. Whereas what you're talking about as well is strategy, like really, what is your overall strategy, and does it line with your purpose and your reason why? And that kind of leads me to the theme of our show a little bit, which is collaboration, which is partnership. I know you and I have collaborated on some things. I just wanted to get you to weigh in on that a little bit, maybe as a strategy or a tactic. But how has collaboration and partnership played a role in your business and maybe the businesses of your clients?
The first thing I'm going to say is many of the things that I was waiting until I was competent and confident, because there's this thing called the competent confident loop. I waited before I started to get into community and get into collaborations. What I would say to anybody out there is that is one of the first things you should do as you're starting. It will speed the growth of your business. It will keep you from making mistakes. So you should, if you're not networking, you should be networking. Even if you don't have a product to offer, you should get out there and just say, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you know about this? Can you tell me about this? So that you can start to hone in. It is very difficult to grow your business alone. Believe me, I have tried. I have tried everything, right? And the amount of growth that I've had with affiliates has been amazing. I mean, and we have just been working together since November. I mean, so we're talking like only 2 months. And if I had done this back in March of 2020, it would have been an amazing thing. So I think you want to kind of, going with the idea of knowing what your vision is and your long-term planning, do those things now so that you're building the right things. I mean, it's the same thing with, I told people about videos, is that when I started doing videos, they were horrible. I mean, they were kind of like, prisoner, prisoner videos, right? But the thing that I'm very glad about is because I was new and nobody really saw them, by the time I started getting traction, I was much better. So do the things that you're afraid of doing early in your business, so that when you really start getting traction, you will be so much better, as opposed to be really well known and then you make a video and people go, how could they be really that good and be this bad, on a video? So community, collaboration, the relationships, and I thank you for that, Chuck, because now when I talk to people, I say to them, I'm looking for long-term relationships. If that includes being affiliates for each other, great. If not, let's do a workshop. Let's do a LinkedIn, live or something like that. But I want the long-term relationships, because they serve you better than just a one-time sale, right? And so that's the thing that I would say to people is, don't think that you have to wait till you're an expert before you try stuff. Try stuff when you first start. So when you make your mistakes, not a lot of people see. I mean, I did my first, I do a thing once a month. I do 2 monthly things. One is just kind of a fun thing. It's called Yvonne's Productivity and Profit Hour. And the first 2 times I did it, nobody showed up, and I was just there by myself. And then the next time, like, one person showed up, and we had a nice it was nice because it was very intimate. I mean, and then gradually more people came, but a lot of those people ended up being clients because I had a chance to have FaceTime with them and they didn't have to book a call, right? And I'm doing one this coming week, and I was like, oh my God, I haven't advertised this. What was I thinking? And I have 15 people that are signed up, just from networking, telling other people I know about, and that are checking and stuff like that. So start before you think you're ready, is what I would say.
Yeah, and sometimes you just have to start with that one person, and that grows to two, that grows to four, that grows to
Mhm.
eight, and you can do the math from there. It grows very, very quickly. And that's kind of how it goes with collaboration and affiliates and all of the things that you're doing. And so speaking of collaborations, I think you're a great person to collaborate with as well. And one of my recommendations to people listening in here is that if you're in need of a better strategy, or maybe the strategy you have could be better, maybe it isn't aligning with your purpose the way it could be, connect with Yvonne. And Yvonne, you have a workshop that you do every month. You want to tell everybody about that?
Sure. It's called the VIP Profit Roadmap. Simply work less, absolutely earn more. And I sometimes joke that that's kind of a false title, because once you find out what you really like and that you can make money at it, sometimes you actually work more, but you enjoy it more. And so we go through the idea of, um, how does the vision, the innovation, and your profit uniqueness, and I do some exercises with you and things to help you to hone in on that and help you. I really want you to get some insights, but I also want you to leave with some actionable steps. So I think it's time well spent.
Well, I know that it's time well spent. I've heard from some of the people that have attended your thing, and nothing but good things to say about you, Yvonne. So, and all of the collaborations and the generosity, even with our network, has been fantastic. So thank you. And just for everyone listening in, if you're watching this on video, the link to sign up for Yvonne's VIP Roadmap workshop is right beneath this video. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, just go into the player that you've got there, and in the show notes will be a link there as well. Go ahead and sign up and connect with Yvonne. Time with Yvonne is time well spent. And this has been time well spent, but we're out of time because we're otherwise we could definitely, and you and I know this, we could do this all day long. Um,
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, because part of our social experiment, I've been asking everybody this question and about learning and books, and so much of my great information, great mentors have come from books, and so I ask everybody where they're here, what is either your favorite book or a must-read book that you think everybody should read next or at some point in their life?
Well, there are a lot of them, but my favorite go-to is The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Hmm.
Um, and I just love the kind of progression and growth progression that he takes you through. Um, and I don't know, it just, either I read it at the right time that it's just stuck with me, but it's worth a read as far as I'm concerned.
Probably once a year. All right. It's so foundational just as a way to be, a way to approach problems, a
Yeah.
way to approach relationships.
Hmm.
So many good takeaways. My favorite is Think Win Win, and
Oh,
that
that's a
is
good one.
something that and my other favorite is Begin with the End in Mind.
Oh, those are all my philosophies too. So
Right?
that's probably the reason we.
That's why we both love that book so much. Well, we're going to add that to our learning library and we'll put your name beside it because you were the one to recommend it. And yeah, great recommendation. Well, Yvonne, this has been a great 30 minutes or so that we've spent together. Hopefully, everybody has got a sense of who you are and how you can help. And if, by the way, if you have not registered for Yvonne's webinar yet, go ahead and do that immediately after we sign off here. And let this time that we've had here mean something. I want you to take one takeaway that you heard us talk about here today. Maybe it's to revisit your purpose and your strategy, or is what I'm doing getting me closer to what I want or further away? Or maybe it's just to go and sign up for Yvonne's workshop, because that's an action step that's easy to do and will help you, especially if the answer is, I don't know. And if you don't know, then you can go to Yvonne's workshop and find out, and she will help you to draw out the answer that's right for you. Yvonne, this has been a great time well spent. And if you were to leave our listeners here with just one final piece of advice or words of wisdom, what would you say to them?
Because it's the beginning of the year and we've all set goals, and we've been talking about smarter goals, I would say smart goals. I would say make smarter goals. And the E is, in my book, is for ethical, but the R is for reward. So the celebrate, as entrepreneurs, we tend to do something and before we finish, we jump into something else. So reward and celebrate your not completion, but your progress, because you're never finished. Not until you're in the grave.
There you go. Reward yourself for the progress. I think those are beautiful words to end this episode by. So thank you, Yvonne. Thank you to our listeners. And remember, you could be just one great collaboration or partnership away from that big growth curve that you're looking to achieve in your business. And in the meantime, keep moving forward, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, everybody.